Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome everyone to today's explainer. If you're a focused learner who's ever found yourself completely baffled by how a tiny, almost invisible disagreement suddenly spirals into a massive, emotionally exhausting conflict, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're uncovering the hidden architecture of human conflict. We're going to decode exactly why small events carry huge, absolutely huge, symbolic meaning, drawing on the fascinating Deru Kailo framework. We'll look at why we argue, how we completely misinterpret each other, and most importantly, how to actually fix it.
Let's ground this right away in a scenario I think we can all relate to. Why do we fight over the dishes? Or, maybe for you it's a missed calendar invite, an unread text message, or some tiny logistical error. You've been there, right? The physical event is so incredibly small, yet the argument that follows is literally explosive. It feels entirely disproportionate. It can make you feel like you or the other person are completely overreacting. But what if you aren't overreacting at all? What if you're actually fighting about something entirely different?
That brings us to a core mantra from the Deru Kailo framework, and honestly, this is a major aha moment. The size of the event is not always the size of the meaning. Human beings don't just react to physical events in a vacuum. We don't just react to what happened, we react to what those events represent. We are meaning-making creatures. We live inside significance, and when we forget that, well, our communication completely breaks down.
Section 1. Why small things escalate.
So, we're going to look at the mechanics of how a dirty dish turns into an existential crisis. And it all starts with understanding that meaning operates way, way below the surface of our observable reality. It's like a giant iceberg. The Deru Kailo framework maps out human interaction in 3 distinct steps. First, we have reality, the observable facts, simply what happened. But we don't stop there. We immediately filter that through perception, how that event landed internally, how it was felt. And finally, we reach the deepest level, meaning, what that event ultimately stands for. Most of our conflicts escalate because one person is arguing about step 1, reality, while the other person is deeply wounded down in step 3, meaning.
Moving on to Section 2. Reality, perception, and meaning.
To truly master this, we need to break down these 3 domains to understand exactly where and why our communication fractures. We start with the reality domain. This is just the tip of the iceberg, asking, what happened? This includes the physical layer, the observable words and actions. It includes the structural layer, which asks if this is an isolated event or part of a larger pattern. And it includes the contextual layer, asking what conditions surrounded this moment. Now, reality anchors our interpretation, but it absolutely doesn't complete it. Saying, I just left a cup on the table is a physical fact, sure, but it completely ignores the human experience of that fact. That's where we plunge beneath the surface into the perception and meaning domains. We go from what the words mean semantically, to the experiential layer of how it was actually felt, to the intentional layer of what was attempted. And here is the secret to human conflict. Unresolved perception prepares the ground for meaning. When we don't resolve how things land, it solidifies into relational meaning, what this means between us, and symbolic meaning, what this stands for. Finally, it hits the meta layer, the entire worldview shaping our interpretation.
Which brings us to Section 3. What does this represent?
For the rest of this explainer, we're going to focus on the absolute most critical layer. This is the exact intersection where tiny, seemingly insignificant things explode into massive arguments. Welcome to the symbolic layer. Let's define it clearly. The symbolic layer is what an event, object, gesture, or omission comes to represent beyond its immediate form. A wedding ring isn't just a circle of metal, is it? A national flag isn't just dyed fabric. We attach massive concepts like dignity, identity, belonging, and exclusion to ordinary things. When we argue at the symbolic layer, we're fighting over those huge concepts, even if we're technically just pointing at a piece of metal or a missed phone call.
Let's look at a real-world comparison to see this mismatch in action. In physical reality, it's just a chair. Maybe someone forgot to pull up a seat for a team member at a meeting. But in symbolic reality, the seat represents welcome and belonging. A missing chair isn't just a logistics failure. To the person left standing, it can symbolize deliberate exclusion, invisibility, and a real loss of status.
Here's another incredibly common one. Physically, it's just a forgotten date on a calendar, just a Tuesday. But symbolically, this day stood for being remembered, being chosen, and being valued. This is exactly why a missed anniversary or a forgotten birthday hurts so deeply. It's not about the 24 hours. The symbolic meaning of that date carries memory and the fundamental feeling of being important to someone else.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most painful communication breakdowns. Physically, someone says, "It's just a joke." Just words, right? But symbolically, the joke carries humiliation, exposure, or contempt. A public correction or a sarcastic comment isn't just a string of vocabulary. It represents a public loss of dignity. If you only defend the literal words, you completely miss the symbolic wound you've inflicted.
Now, this isn't just about interpersonal squabbles, by the way. This is a civilizational reality. The psychologist Jordan B. Peterson notes, "We act out stories and rituals even when we don't fully understand them. We are so deeply wired for symbols, meaning, and narrative that we participate in them constantly without even realizing it. Our need for symbolic significance is baked right into our biology and our history."
Peterson points to a fantastic example of this, the Christmas tree. Think about it. Why do millions of people drag a dying plant into their living room and cover it in electricity? Well, Peterson explains it's deeply symbolic. We're decorating the tree of life to celebrate the birth of light in the darkest time of the year. Our actions, even the ones that just seem like ordinary, quirky habits, carry profound historical and symbolic wisdom way beyond their literal description. We need symbols to survive.
Section 4. The Traps of Interpretation.
But because symbols are so powerful, they're incredibly easy to mishandle. While symbolic meaning is very real, it can be misused or misunderstood, leading us into two highly destructive communication traps. The first trap is symbolic inflation. This is defined as turning a real meaning into a larger verdict than the evidence supports. It's when we make a single event carry a total accusation, like claiming that because someone missed one text message, it absolutely proves they hate you and have never cared about you. The feeling of neglect might be very real, but the conclusion is inflated far beyond reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this contrast is how both extremes destroy communication. An inflated view says, "You forgot a date, so you hate me." But a minimized view says, "It was just a date, get over it." In one case, a person is making the symbol mean absolutely everything, and in the other, they're making the symbol mean absolutely nothing. That second extreme is our second trap, symbolic minimization. This is reducing meaning down to just the physical event in order to avoid the significance it carried. This is exactly why saying "it was just a joke" or "it's just a chair" is so incredibly harmful. Minimization erases the real, lived impact. It basically tells the other person that their dignity and their symbolic reality are invalid. Section 5. Repairing the missed layer. So, how do we get out of this mess? How do we stop fighting over the dishes and start fixing the actual problem? Well, let's look at the practical solution to de-escalate these layered conflicts. Before we do anything, the Deru Kailo framework lays down a core boundary. Safety comes before interpretation. If you're in a physically or emotionally unsafe situation, layer analysis is not the priority. But in a standard conflict, the goal is coherence without control. Meaning must be clarified without demanding control over the other person. Symbolic repair should always be about restoring dignity, not about demanding revenge or forcing submission. The absolute signature repair insight here is returning to the missed layer. Notice how often we cross our wires, intention versus impact. Like saying, "I didn't mean it" versus "but it hurt." Event versus pattern, like it was just one time versus "it keeps happening." Literal versus symbolic, like it was just a joke versus "it didn't feel like a joke." When an argument is just spinning in circles, it's almost always because two people are arguing from entirely different layers.
So here is your actionable repair toolkit. First, always acknowledge the impact before you rush to explain your intention. Second, ask yourself or your partner, what did this stand for? What's the hidden symbolic meaning here? Third, do not inflate that symbol into a total verdict. Fourth, do not minimize the symbol back down to just physical facts. And finally, address the symbolic meaning directly. A physical fix, like just muttering a quick sorry, will never ever heal a symbolic injury.
So, the crucial point is summarized in this ultimate relationship-saving phrase. If you take nothing else away from this explainer, memorize this quote. "I answered the wrong layer. Let me go back." The very moment you realize you're defending your intention while your partner is talking about their pain, or you're arguing about a literal dish while they're talking about a pattern of neglect, just stop, reset, say, "I answered the wrong layer. Let me go back." It literally changes everything.
I want to leave you with this provocative question to reflect on today. Think about the very last major argument you had. Got it? Now, looking at everything we've covered, which layer were you actually fighting about?
Were you stuck on the physical facts, or were you fighting a battle over what it all symbolized? Apply this framework to your next difficult conversation and just watch how it transforms the outcome. Thanks so much for diving in with me today. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.
Want to learn more? Explore the full framework in Reality, Perception, and Meaning. Available now at derukailo.com and on Amazon Kindle.